superior aspect, superior aspect, sagittal plane, sagittal plane, frontal plane, frontal plane, transverse plane, transverse plane, horizontal plane, horizontal plane, inferior aspect, inferior aspect, oblique plane, oblique plane, coronal plane, coronal plane, mid-coronal plane, mid-coronal plane, mid-sagittal plane, mid-sagittal plane, right, right, left, left, distal, distal, proximal, proximal, medial, medial, lateral, lateral, superior, superior, inferior, inferior, interior, interior, ventral, ventral, posterior, posterior, dorsal, dorsal, cranial cavity, cranial cavity, vertebral canal, vertebral canal, thoracic cavity, thoracic cavity, diaphragm, diaphragm, ventral cavity, ventral cavity, dorsal cavity, dorsal cavity, abdominal cavity, abdominal cavity, pelvic cavity, pelvic cavity, abdominopelvic cavity, abdominopelvic cavity, cranial cavity, cranial cavity, right pleural cavity, right pleural cavity, mediastinum, mediastinum, left pleural cavity, left pleural cavity, diaphragm, diaphragm, thoracic cavity, thoracic cavity, abdominal cavity, abdominal cavity, pelvic cavity, pelvic cavity, abdominopelvic cavity, abdominopelvic cavity, pericardial cavity, pericardial cavity, right upper quadrant, right upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, right lower quadrant, left upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant, left lower quadrant, right hypochondriac region, right hypochondriac region, right lumbar region, right lumbar region, right iliac region, right iliac region, hypogastric region, hypogastric region, epigastric region, epigastric region, left hypochondriac region, left hypochondriac region, left lumbar region, left lumbar region, umbilical region, umbilical region, left iliac region, left iliac region, heart, heart, lungs, lungs, diaphragm, diaphragm, stomach, stomach, colon, colon, gallbladder, gallbladder, sphenic, sphenic, hyposthenic, hyposthenic, asthenic, asthenic, hypersthenic, hypersthenic, cerebral cranium, cerebral cranium, face, face, skull, skull, clavicle, clavicle, scapula, scapula, sternum, sternum, humerus, humerus, ribs, ribs, vertebral column, vertebral column, hip bone, hip bone, radius, radius, ulna, ulna, femur, femur, patella, patella, tibia, tibia, fibula, fibula, tarsal bone, tarsal bone, metatarsal bone, metatarsal bone, phalanges, phalanges, carpals, carpals, metacarpals, metacarpals, sacrum, sacrum, coccyx, coccyx, phalanges, phalanges, proximal epiphysis, proximal epiphysis, diaphysis, diaphysis, distal epiphysis, distal epiphysis, femur, femur, articular cartilage, articular cartilage, spongy bone, spongy bone, epiphyseal line, epiphyseal line, compact bone, compact bone, marrow cavity, marrow cavity, yellow marrow, yellow marrow, periosteum, periosteum, cartilaginous model, cartilaginous model, developing periosteum, developing periosteum, calcified cartilage, calcified cartilage, primary ossification center, primary ossification center, compact bone developing, compact bone developing, blood vessel, secondary ossification center, secondary ossification center, marrow cavity, epiphyseal plate, epiphyseal plate, compact bone, epiphyseal line, articular cartilage, spongy bone, adduction, abduction, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, extension, flexion, hyperextension, eversion, protraction, retraction, rotation, circumduction, elevation, depression, pronation, supination,